In this episode of the Ear Scouts podcast, we're sharing 3 different strategies to help you plan for a picture perfect day at Disney's Hollywood Studios. Whether you're traveling with little Ear Scouts who aren't ready for all those big kid rides, or you're looking for a plan to pack tons of rides, shows, and characters into a single studio's day, we've got you covered. Plus, we've got our questions of the week that are all about Rider Switch, so stick around for that. We got tons of tips to share, so let's get to it. Hi ho, everybody. This is Rob with Ear Scouts coming to you from our makeshift studio here in Celebration, Florida. We are thawing out here after a surprisingly chilly week. There were actually icicles on the fountains in the parks here this week. I don't know if you guys saw that on social media, but pretty amazing that it was so cold here in Orlando. But we can't complain too much because we are back up to a high of 72 degrees today. So, joining us from the decidedly chillier state of Indiana is our good friend and Disney trivia guru, Craig. Hi ho, Craig.
Hi ho, everybody.
So what's the temperature up there right now?
It's a balmy 16 degrees.
Ooh, nice. Very nice. Well, at least
We'll
it's
take
above
that.
zero. That's
Exactly.
Also with us from another chilly state is the host of Jessica Scraps on YouTube, Jessica. Hi ho, Jessica. What's the temperature up there in Connecticut?
Right now it's 24, but I spent most of the day today in New York City, and it only got up to 28 for the 2 days I was there. So it's been a cold couple of days.
Wow. Well, also with me here in Celebration, where again, the high today was a sunny 72, is the other half of Ear Scouts, Eric. Hi ho, Eric.
Hi ho, everyone.
As always, Eric will be keeping up with the live chat over on Patreon. If you'd like to join us live as we record each episode and get access to the exclusive Patreon after party, head on over to patreon.com/Ear Scouts. Before we get into our plans, however, I do have a very important programming note. If you listen to this podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or one of those platforms or on Patreon, nothing's going to change for you. However, if you are watching us on YouTube or listening to us through the YouTube subscription, it's important that you're going to need to subscribe to a brand new podcast channel. The Ear Scouts podcast will no longer be on the Ear Scouts main YouTube channel. There's going to be a special channel all for the podcast itself. And we're really excited about that. And we will definitely be putting in the comments of this video that you're watching right now a link to that new YouTube channel so that you can go ahead and subscribe and you will not miss a single episode, because next week, the next episode is going to be on that new channel. Again, if you're not watching or listening through YouTube, you don't need to do anything, but YouTube, we're going to have a new channel for you. Today, my friends, is all about Hollywood Studios. And I feel like before we get started, we should briefly chat about all the big changes that are coming to Hollywood Studios this year, because even if you feel like you know this park backwards and forwards, there's going to be some curveballs thrown this year, especially with some attractions that have gone down for refurbishment, and we don't really know exactly when they're going to come back. We do know that Rock and Roller Coaster is going to go down March 2nd to be turned into a Muppets themed Rock and Roller Coaster. And we just know that's coming back in the summer. We also know that Smuggler's Run is going to have a new mission on May 22nd, but we're assuming it's probably going to need to go down, don't you all think, for a little bit for that new mission to be programmed? I would think. Also closed until the summer, again, the vague summer is all we know, is most of Animation Courtyard, which is getting a huge upgrade, including a Disney Junior Mickey Mouse Clubhouse Live show. And of course, the animation experience that's moving over from Animal Kingdom. And last but certainly not least, the Muppets area of Grand Avenue is just gone. It's closed for the foreseeable future. I don't think we have a date on when that's going to be turned into Monstropolis. I feel like I've heard 2027 thrown around as a possible reopening. With that said, let's move on to our tips and plans for Hollywood Studios. As we did with Animal Kingdom, we each have 3 different scenarios that we're planning for today. Jessica will be creating a plan for families with littles. I'll be focused on a plan that is heavy on shows and characters, and Craig will be all about rides, rides, rides. So, Jessica, why don't you kick us off? What is your plan for your day with a family with little ones in tow?
Great. Yeah. So I'm going to start by just reminding you of a few of my assumptions on this. And that is that I have littles being children that cannot ride the big rides. So less than 44 inches. And I think that's the kind of the big cutoff. Now, some of the places have 48 inches. And then we'll hear a little bit later, there's even a ride that has a smaller height requirement in Hollywood Studios. But generally, I'm talking 44 inches so that you can't ride most of the rides. Also, I'm assuming even though you have littles that can't ride the rides, you want to stay together. So we're not talking about having teenagers that are going to go off and do their own thing. We're talking about a family that's going to stay together and spend the day in Hollywood Studios, and they can't ride a lot of these bigger rides. That's kind of my base assumption. Um, right now, and I'm going to go on what we're doing right now before the summer, there's not a lot of unique experiences in Hollywood Studios for families. Um, I will say that if you were asking me which you had to pick a park to not do right now before the summer of 2026, if you had little kids, this is the park that I would skip as a family. Just putting it out there. I think you can get a lot of the things that I'm going to talk about in a way at the other 3 parks. And I think this could be the park to skip. So if you're listening to this and you've only got 3 park days, I would maybe skip Hollywood Studios. Okay, so let me just kind of start with kind of my highlights of I would not rope drop Hollywood Studios. So they've taken away the one kind of unique uh, Disney Junior breakfast at Hollywood and Vine, and now it's a Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse kind of breakfast, and that's great. It's a lovely breakfast, but I think you can find a better character experience outside of Hollywood Studios for breakfast. So if I had littles, there's a couple that really came to mind to me. Topolino's that has the paint and the artist palette kind of at the Riviera. That's a really good sit down breakfast, and the kids really seem to like it. I know it's not everybody's favorite, but Cape May Cafe has a really nice beach themed character breakfast, and it's a buffet. And I know for little kids, the ability to just go and get a couple of eggs and a waffle and have that choices sometimes is what you're looking for. And the price point for Cape May breakfast is really good for a character breakfast. It's a really good price point. So I personally would find one either on the Skyliner, so you've got Riviera, or with walking distance, which is Cape May. Either one of those I would do for breakfast and not rope drop and not try to do breakfast there at Hollywood Studios. That's kind of my first big suggestion. When you get into Hollywood Studios with the littles, the one thing that I will say is they have some of the best shows for little kids. And I'm going to highlight 3 of them. Rob may talk about these in a little bit more detail, but particularly Frozen Sing Along for little kids. And I've never been in that show where the kids don't get super excited when Anna's comes out, or when the bubbles start and it's the Frozen and then they start singing. And the flip side of that I bet Rob will talk about in more detail is it's also got some adult humor, which is super fun for everybody. So Frozen Sing Along is a great show. Underrated, I think, is Beauty and the Beast. I think the Beauty and the Beast show that's at the big theater, it's in my mind almost Broadway caliber. They've got, the costumes and they do the full show, and it is a really nice time to sit down, have a relax. You can take food into that, which you can't in some of the other ones, and kind of watch a nice show. And if your kids are Beauty and the Beast fans, it's really beautiful. And then the last one is the updated Little Mermaid. So this was something I think that was missing for a while from from Hollywood Studios. I think Little Mermaid for a lot of kids is it's a big IP. It's one that people like. And they have puppets in here. So it's different than some of the other shows in that it's neon and it's bright colors. And particularly for that age group, and I'm thinking 5 and under, it's everything that they like about lights and action and kind of singing. And it's also a good time amount of time. It's just the right amount of time. It's not too long, but it's not too short. And it tells the story, but it leaves out some of the scary parts. So I think this Little Mermaid, particularly for kids, I find it less scary than the Little Mermaid ride in Magic Kingdom. Even they've kind of glanced over the big fight scene, but the Ursula animatronic that comes out with the person in it is just amazing. The big, I want to call it a puppet, but it's more of a, I don't know if it's a puppet or an animatronic, but whichever one it is, it's really cool. So
It's a puppet matronic.
a puppet matronic. It's a puppet
Yeah.
matronic. That's what I'll call it. Anyway, I think all 3 of those shows are definitely worth it for the younger kids. There's some shows I'm not talking about, and Rob will talk about them, but it's because I think they're a little more adult or a little bit older audience. Then as far as characters, right now, kind of the most unique character for this age group is Olaf. And that's the one that you really need to get. The other characters, the Pixar characters, there's some Toy Story characters, Mickey and Minnie. So right now, the one character I really tell all of my friends that have kids is Olaf. That seems to be a big draw for the parks. I bet after the new Toy Story movie comes out, there'll be a renewed interest in Toy Story, but some of the kids don't relate to Buzz and Woody and Jesse if they're 5 and under. Those movies are kind of, they'll need a resurgence, and they might after the new movie.
Yes, though, you don't think that, I mean, I feel like in this day of infinite streaming, on Disney Plus, I think probably kids are exposed though to a lot of, especially the high profile animated Disney classics like in Pixar, like Toy Story.
Right. And that's not that they don't know it. I just don't know that the lines for those characters are very long. And I'm not sure it's worth the investment for those characters. Now, if your child loves Buzz or loves Woody, I think it's different. But
Yeah.
the one kind of unique younger kid character right now, because they've taken away all the Disney Junior characters, is Olaf, in my kind of opinion.
Yeah. No, I see what you mean, because they used to have so many characters that were specifically targeting that set. Because there was Doc McStuffins, and there were some characters there that I was like, I didn't really know who they were, because they were clearly
Vampirina?
I knew who Vampirina was, but there was one, Fancy Nancy.
Fancy Nancy?
I have no idea who Fancy Nancy is, but she's very fancy.
She's very popular. She's very popular with the kids. No, and I think that's the point, is that they took away, and I'll talk about it in a second, but they've taken away a lot of the unique Disney Junior characters that used to make Hollywood Studios really cool for little kids. I think what's left is Olaf. And then if you're into some of the Pixar, then there's that whole section back there. As far as rides, the other issue we have is there's only 2. There's only 2 rides at all of Hollywood Studios, and that's Runaway Railway and Toy Story Mania. If your child is over 32 inches, you can do Alien Swirling Saucers. There may be a possibility to ride Slinky, so it still has a height requirement, but you might be able to get some of your older littles onto Slinky.
And honestly, I think even though your kid might meet the height requirement for Toy Story Mania, that one again is one that's going to be dependent on, how are they old enough to get the game aspect of it, to be able to enjoy it, the way that an older kid would.
Right. And I think that, so in my mind, it's hard because there's not enough rides really for them to ride. So for Hollywood Studios, I would not recommend Lightning Lanes if you're all going to ride together. And we'll talk about Rider Switch and as one of our questions, but that would be an option. But if you're planning on all riding together and you're all going to be doing things as a group, there's really only 2, maybe 3, and maybe only 1, depending on your child, rides that you can ride, it's not necessarily worth the financial obligation that you have to buy lightning lanes. I think you can wait in the one runaway railway line. I think you can do. I think that's definitely something that, is doable for everybody. So one of the things we haven't really talked about in depth is the fact that in summer of 2026, they're bringing back the animation courtyard. And Animation Courtyard should have a slight change from what it had before. Before, it was focused on Disney Junior characters. Now they're going to have an animation experience where you can draw, much like you did in Animal Kingdom, but they're going to have a playground themed to Alice in Wonderland. They said they're going to have oversized flowers. I'm picturing really kind of a almost like what we had with the Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, where you kind of saw everything big and life size, over life sized. I think that will be amazing. They're going to have some special characters. Rapunzel will be one of them. And it's just going to have more of a kids theme. There's going to be a special movie back there that you can watch. And I think we're going to get a section for the littles again that's going to be amazing, that will allow us to have a few more things to do for them. I think overall, my strategy for Hollywood Studios is eat breakfast somewhere else, come in. I would go straight back to Beauty and the Beast, because that walk is sometimes long. I would see Beauty and the Beast, and then I would come up and walk the circle. I would either go to ride Runaway Railway, see Frozen, see Olaf, then end. There are Pixar characters that you could meet. And if your child's big enough, do Toy Story Mania before you leave the park. I think Hollywood Studios is a good kind of half-day park for littles. It gives you time to swim in the pool, take a nap, maybe do a fun dinner, but definitely do a fun breakfast and then go. That's kind of my overall strategy with the family. And I hope that it's going to change. I hope that there's going to be more to do. But I think right now, like I said in the beginning, I think Hollywood Studios for small kids is not what it used to be.
So one thing I will add to your plan for the day, I think if you are planning to rope drop, if you are a rope drop family, it definitely does make sense to rope drop Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, just because you will get a shorter wait then. That's actually a really great rope drop ride in general, just because so many people are focused on Slinky Dog Dash and, Rise of the Resistance and those bigger ticket rides in that park first thing in the morning. So even if you don't have early entry, you can usually walk in and get a pretty decent wait on Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, even without early entry. So if you do feel like you want to do rope drop, I think that would be a good thing to do. And I'm going to talk about something else in my strategy that you might want to consider as well. But Eric, do we have anything from Patreon that folks wanted to share?
Yes. Well, Jessica P mentioned something important, that it's just that the height restrictions are tough in Hollywood studios, which was something that you guys were mentioning, talking about. Now, the Pfeiffer Five family, um, they mentioned that they rope dropped Minnie at Hollywood Studios and got about like 5 to 10 minutes with her, all for themselves before the next group,
Wow.
which was it was their daughters. She was a 5 year old, top of her list, character experience. So I mean, sometimes when you're one of the first families who are welcomed by the characters, like uh you can have like those magical moments, every now and then. It happens with Cinderella, with Cinderella's royal table. So I think that that's I mean, if characters are important to you, that's a very unique experience to have. And hopefully you will be lucky enough to be the chosen family or the first family over there. um,
It's a great
now
idea. Yeah.
And that's actually also a great segue into my plan for the day, because I am going to be talking about that, and that actually makes me feel even more confident in one of my plans to potentially start your day if your focus is going to be characters and shows. So I'm assuming you're probably going to want to do some rides, but if the thing you're most excited about when you come to Hollywood Studios is characters and shows, this is going to be kind of the plan that you're going to want to at least consider as you're building out your day, because in many ways, Hollywood Studios is the park for characters and shows because there are tons of great uh, show options. There's so many characters. As Jessica was mentioning, it's a very eclectic mix of characters, and there are characters for older kids and younger kids. Not as many for younger kids right now, but they'll be coming back when Animation Courtyard opens. But you've got, of course, Mickey and Minnie, classics for all ages. But then you've got so many great shows. And if you think about, the other parks, I think the only park that really comes close to Hollywood Studios in terms of the quality of the shows, in my opinion, is uh, Animal Kingdom. Because I feel like, Magic Kingdom, most of the shows that are there are animatronics based, which are cool. They're awesome, but they it's a different kind of show experience than what you're able to get at Hollywood Studios, where, as Jessica mentioned, some of them have kind of a Broadway caliber feel to them. They have a full cast, they have dancing and singing. So I do think that if you're a show person or character person, I think Hollywood Studios is going to be one of your favorite parks. Um, some things I think you need to think about before you begin planning your day. Number one is think about the timing of certain things that you want to do. So pick out your must do's and then check the app, because so many of the shows and characters in Hollywood Studios end pretty early. So that park usually stays open till 9 o'clock, sometimes 9:30, depending on the time of year. Yet a lot of the characters and show things are done. Some of them are done as early as like 3 o'clock, 3:30. So be sure that you check the app before you go. Make your list of must dos and just make note of which ones are ending early. The easiest way to do this, if you're not familiar, just go into the app, and down at the bottom, you're going to see that I call it a map marker icon. I think Jessica calls it the geotag, but you're going to tap on that, and up at the top, you're going to see different things. It starts out initially with wait times, but you can also choose characters or entertainment, and you'll be able to see all the different, characters and shows and things in the park. And you'll be able to see that many of them do end pretty early. Another thing you need to think about as you're planning out your perfect day is weather, because some shows and characters are very weather dependent and they will be canceled if there's heavy rain or especially if there's lightning. So do those things that are weather dependent early, because Orlando is notorious for an afternoon thunderstorm, and it will come out of nowhere. Your weather app will say sunny, sunny, sunny all day long, and then just boom, out of nowhere in the middle of the afternoon is a massive thunderstorm. It's just how Orlando works. So the one thing I think, the one show that you most need to be concerned about for that would be the Indiana Jones Epic Stunt Spectacular. That one cannot go on if there's heavy rain or if there's lightning. Um, Also, any of the characters that do their meet and greets outside, those will typically not be able to meet, or they'll be meeting in kind of a weird spot that's not normal, if they even do meet. So, those are the things I would say you want to prioritize if you're concerned about weather. In terms of Lightning Lane, I think Lightning Lane, as a general rule, is essential at Hollywood Studios if you're planning to incorporate rides into your day, because there are so many heavy hitter rides in this park. Studios is one of those. It doesn't have the most rides. It's not even close to how many rides you're going to find in Magic Kingdom, for example, but it has so many of the most popular rides. Now, these are more for older kids and adults. We're talking about rides like Slinky Dog Dash. I feel like that one probably 5 or 6, right? Is that when kids can start doing Slinky, you think?
Yeah,
Jessica.
100%.
So I think if you've got families with slightly older littles, there's a ton of rides that they're going to love, that are going to be some of their favorite rides at all Disney World, but they're going to have really long lines on a busy day. So if characters and shows are your focus, but you still want to do some rides, you're going to need Lightning Lane because otherwise you're not going to have time for characters and shows. You're going to spend half your day in the line for just a few rides because they're that long. So I would say if you want that blend, consider Lightning Lane. It's also helpful actually for the Little Mermaid show that Jessica was talking about. I'm going to add just a little bit to what Jessica was saying. One of the things I think is really cool about the Little Mermaid show and why, especially if you're making shows a big focus of your day, you should consider it. It not only does it have this blending of puppets and live actors and live singing, that's key for that show. The live singing is spectacular. I mean, I've seen multiple friends of Ariel perform there, and the singing is top notch. It's really spectacular, but also they've done this really ingenious thing where they blend the live actors and the puppets with animation that comes in at different levels. So it's kind of, if you're familiar with how, Disney revolutionized animation with the multi-plane camera, they've kind of done that on a stage where you've got animation behind the characters and then you've got animation that happens seemingly magically in front of the characters, and it's a very cool experience. And I agree with Jessica, especially if you've got littles who love the Little Mermaid, this is a must do. The problem with that show, it runs constantly throughout the day, and it's one of those that as soon as one show is done, they're going to let in the next crowd for the next one, kind of like they do Tiki Room or Country Bears or Zootopia. Yep, was another good one. But the thing is that essentially there's a line. It's not like a show where there's like there are show times, but that's not how you're going to see this show on a busy day. You're going to wait in line until you get far enough up that you fit into the next showing of the show. You can avoid that by having a lightning lane for it, which is why it's become one of the most popular lightning lanes in Hollywood studios, despite the fact that shows aren't usually big tickets. Um, but if you have a lightning lane for it, you don't have to worry about that. You can just go shortly before the next show is going to begin, and you're almost guaranteed, if you have that lightning lane, that you're going to be able to tap in and just breeze right into the next showing. So that can be huge for that. Um, I do think, as I mentioned, Lightning Lane is less necessary for other shows, but I do typically like to use a Lightning Lane to book the Indiana Jones Stunt Spectacular because I find I'm usually able to get a better seat without waiting a long time for it. And that's usually how I like to use Lightning Lanes for shows. Another thing you might want to consider, I really enjoy using a Lightning Lane for Frozen first thing in the day, the Frozen sing along. The reason for this is because you can pretty much always get a lightning lane for Frozen at 9:05. The park opens at 9, so you can tap in at that show. And if you know how Lightning Lane works, tapping in at your first attraction is what unlocks your ability to book multiple top tier attractions and to book attractions in multiple parks. So this is a really helpful trick. Just tap in at that show, make that your first start of the day if you're using Lightning Lane, and while you're waiting for that show to start, you can go in and look at your different lightning lanes, maybe choose some different lightning lanes because now you're not limited to having two tier twos. You could make them all tier one attractions. And so that time while you're sitting and waiting for the show to start is the perfect time to just kind of get your lightning lanes in order, adjust things, try to move times up, try to get everything how you want it once you're unlocked. So that's one thing I like to do that at Hollywood Studios when I'm using Lightning Lane. Another thing that I do want to mention about Lightning Lane, if you choose to use it, the Villains show is Villains Unfairly Ever After is one of the newest shows at the park. I think it's a must do. It's my favorite of the new shows that have come along recently. I like it even more than Zootopia, with apologies to Jessica for saying such a sacrilegious thing. But I,
I like it too, and I like it as a show more than Zootopia.
oh,
As
wow.
a
All right.
I think it's a better. I mean, Zootopia is still just a 3D movie. I mean, don't get me wrong; it's the best 3D movie on property, but it's not to me. It's not a show. And the Villain show, I will agree with you, is is a great show.
The visuals are
Amazing.
amazing. I mean, this is I don't want to spoil it for you, but there's just so many things that you're going to think that you're looking at are physically real, and then you realize as the show goes on that it was all an illusion. And I don't it's an amazingly put together show. Put it on your list, but no, that show is one of the only ones that does not have a lightning lane. At least it didn't the last time I went. I don't know if they're going to add a lightning lane potentially at some point, but as of now, does not have one. And
Yeah.
does it have one now, Craig? You
No,
were
it
just
doesn't.
there.
I just thought it was interesting that Villains and the new Little Mermaid show opened at the same time, and
Mhm.
one had Lightning Lane and one didn't.
Yep.
So I guess I'm kind of surprised. I just assumed that they would go one way or the other with both of them after they. I thought it was just they're going to try both to see how it works out for them at that time. But I just thought it was
E
odd, especially that Villains didn't get it and Mermaid did.
Especially
But
when you think about the fact that Villains was replacing the Cars show that was there,
Lightning
Racing
McQueen.
Academy, Lightning McQueen's Racing Academy, which did have a lightning lane. So the infrastructure for lightning lane was there. It existed. They just removed it. My gut is it's because the villain show has a very huge theater, but then again, so does Frozen, and Frozen has a lightning lane. I don't know. I have no idea why they don't have it, but they don't. So that's one. If you're using lightning lane, just make a plan for villains, because if shows are important to you, this should be very close, if not at the top of your list, and you won't be able to get a lightning lane for it. So make a plan. And speaking of villains, one thing I also like to do when I'm planning out a Hollywood Studios day, villains is at the end of Sunset Boulevard. Every other area of Hollywood Studios is pretty easy to get to cross back and forth from. So the things that we usually say about parks at Disney, try not to crisscross, try to do everything in one big loop. The only park where I don't think that's an absolute necessity is Hollywood Studios, because other than Sunset Boulevard, which is very much off in its own little world, everything else is pretty tight together. It's not a huge amount of ground you have to cover to get from one area to the other. So if you find that it's easier for you to do a little bit of crisscrossing in the other lands, I don't think it's as big of a deal at studios as it would be at the other parks. The exception to that, though, is Sunset Boulevard. Sunset is basically it's a street that's going to go jutting off from the main area of the park, and it ends at a dead end. So it's not very easy. If you're all the way down that dead end, it's better to try to do everything down there at once if you can. So that's going to mean villains, and it's also going to mean that Beauty and the Beast show. If that was one you're excited about, that's also down there on Sunset Boulevard. Ride wise, down there, you've got Tower of Terror, and for as long as it's open, Rock and Roller Coaster, and soon Muppets version of Rock and Roller Coaster. The other thing I think is really important to know is you're planning a character and show focused day. There's this trick that you may have heard about with rides, which is that you can get in the line for a ride right before the park is going to close, and they're going to let you stay in that line as long as it takes to ride the ride, which is a great way to kind of extend your Disney day. That does not work with characters. Even characters that have a dedicated queue with a posted wait time, they will cut off that queue when the line has gotten longer than they have park time for. So do know, if characters are important to you, you can't do that trick. You've got to be there earlier for characters. And the other last thing I want to mention as it relates to the end of your day at Hollywood Studios, if there are two showings of Phantasmic, that is the big nighttime spectacular that happens at Hollywood Studios. It's a phenomenal show. If you're there for shows, this is a must. You got to do Phantasmic. But sometimes there will be two shows, and when there are, it's great because the second show is typically going to be after the park is closed. It'll be usually 30 minutes after park close, and it will be empty. I mean, not empty, but you'll be able to get a great seat at the very last minute. You can walk up as the show is starting, and you're going to be able to get a great spot. And that is not true at all when there's only one show, or even at the earlier show when there are two. So if you do want to go to that earlier show, no, you're going to have to dedicate 30 to 45 minutes to just wait in line before that show starts in order to get a good seat. Phantasmic is a weird show in that you don't want to be very close to it because you're going to get drenched with water. If you're, I mean,
Hmm.
the first third of the theater, like the first third set of rows closest to the, I say stage, but it's really more of a lake than a stage.
Hmm.
But those rows there, you're gonna get drenched. Craig,
Yeah.
did you want to jump in there?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that when it comes to two show days for Phantasmic or pretty much any nighttime spectacular, during that first showing is also a great time to get some short waits on rides
Mhm.
and other shows and character meets because a good portion of the park is sitting there watching the show. So that's another good tip.
For sure. So now that we've kind of gotten out of the way the things I think you should be thinking about as you plan out your day, I'm just going to give you a quick rundown of how I would structure my day at Hollywood Studios. If you wanted to include rides, I would begin with Sunset Boulevard because you're going to get really short waits on Tower of Terror and Rock and Roller Coaster, depending on when you're there and whether or not it's open. And you'll be able to catch the first show while you're down there of Villains and Beauty and the Beast, if that's on your list to do. If rides are not a priority for you, however, I would suggest beginning with Mickey and Minnie, the meet and greet at Red Carpet Dreams, which is near ABC Commissary and Sci Fi Dine In. As Eric mentioned from the comments on Patreon, number one, you're going to have a very short, if any wait at all, if you rope drop Mickey and Minnie there, where that's not going to be the case later in the day. That line will get pretty long on busy days. So it's a good use of your time, but it can also be a magical moment, right? It's possible that if there's no one else in line, you're going to have a better experience. The other thing I would recommend doing first thing in your day, knock out those outdoor character meet and greets before it gets too hot or crowded or they get rained out, because the one of the biggest things of meeting these characters is the photos that you're going to get. And if you're going to meet those outdoor characters after waiting in a long line at 2 in the afternoon with the blazing sun, you're probably going to look a little bit sweaty and gross for those photos. Whereas if you get them early in the day when you're still feeling fresh and you're not feeling like, you've been in an oven for half the day, or even worse, that you've been rained on and drenched, I just think if characters are important to you, do those outdoor ones, especially earlier in the day. Also, catch Indiana Jones at your earliest convenient time. Again, because of weather here in Orlando, if it's going to be a thunderstorm, it's probably going to be in the afternoon. So the earlier shows are usually safe. Once you hit your midday to late afternoon, I would suggest switch your focus to indoor shows to get some AC and rest. And also, you want to make sure that you're fitting these shows into your day before it gets too late. Because as we mentioned, those shows and characters a lot of times are going to stop before the day is done, whereas rides are going to continue happening until park close. So with this strategy, it can be a good idea to shift shows into the middle of your day and let rides come later when the shows are done. Some examples just to give you an idea. The last show for Indiana Jones Epic Stunt Spectacular today was 4:30 p.m. That was the last show. And if you're there in the summer, there's a good chance that show is going to be rained out. I mean, the last show was even earlier than that. Beauty and the Beast, their last show today was 5 p.m. Um, Villains and Frozen and The Little Mermaid, those shows do run a little bit later. So if you need to push some shows later, those are probably the ones to do that with. Also, before it gets too late, you want to make sure that you've wrapped up all the meet and greets with characters that are the ones that don't have a dedicated line. So these are mostly outdoor characters, but even meeting Edna Mode, for example, she does have a dedicated line, but she wraps up really early. I think she's done at like 5-ish, somewhere around there. Um, But some characters, like for example, today, if you're a big fan of the Goofy movie, you probably would love to get a photo with Goofy and Max, but they're going to be done at 3:50 p.m. That's pretty early. So
Mm.
you do want to make sure you prioritize that. Darth Vader and Joy both ended today at 4. Frozone, Sully, and several others were done at 4:30. So you see why I'm suggesting put this stuff earlier in your day and save rides for later, because those rides are going to typically go until the park closes. Um, and another thing I do recommend doing, as we said, you want to look in the app before you go, but you also want to check again on the day of your visit. Check in that morning, because these times do sometimes change from day to day. Certain characters may appear some days and they're just not there other days. So check it on the day of your visit. And what I like to do, I like to open up my notes app on my iPhone and I make a little checklist, and I will copy and paste the show times for the things that are really important to me. I'll put those times into my notes. And, I love the checklist because when you tap it and check it, it goes down to the bottom, it gets out of your view. And it's a great way to kind of, as you're looking for opportunities and things to do in the course of your day, having that list and seeing the times all right there is very handy. There are a couple of shows that I often even forget to bring up when we're making videos about the parks, because as someone who comes to the parks frequently, it's not a show that you typically will go see every time you come. But if you're coming for a once in a lifetime trip or you don't come all that often, the projection shows that happen on the Chinese theater are pretty cool. There's one that's dedicated to uh, live action films, and then there's another one that's dedicated to animated classics. And it's very cool to see, the animations are tied to music and lighting effects, and there's a little bit of fireworks here and there. I wouldn't say this is something that's a must do, like you absolutely need to put it on your list, but if shows are important to you, this is one that you might want to consider. And the reason I want to bring this up is because Phantasmic is the much more important nighttime show. However, if you're there on a day when Phantasmic has 2 shows, typically that second Phantasmic will be late enough that you would be able to see both of these shows and still have time to get down to catch Phantasmic. I think they schedule it that way for that reason. So that's just another reason to consider the second show of Phantasmic. So that's kind of my plan for the day. Any other thoughts from everyone here or from over on Patreon?
Everything you said, I think applies to families with littles. I think that's the thing is that there's so many characters. You can find the characters your family likes. It's a great and shows our two strategies really go together for this park. And I think that's the key for Hollywood Studios. And I really like I can't say we don't talk enough about Beauty and the Beast show, but I think it really is an underrated kind of classic at the park. So
Yeah, I can honestly say I don't think that there's a single show at Hollywood Studios that I would say, well, actually, I'll take that back. The projection shows on Chinese theater. If you had to cut something, those would probably be the ones I cut. But in terms of the stage shows, they're all great. I
mhm.
mean, the the Frozen sing along, I can't tell you how many times, because I always say this in my videos. Whenever we go to Frozen, I say, don't discount this show just because you think you don't like Frozen and you're not going to care about this show, because it's one of those shows that is so expertly crafted to have things that are going to entrance the little ones. And there's some little jokes in there that are going to go right over the little ones' heads that are directed right at the parents and the adults. And it's a very fun show.
Mhm.
It's also kind of an improv show. So you can see that show every single time you come to Disney World, and it's going to be a little bit different show every time, which just it's a great one. So don't miss that one.
Which Ellen in the chat mentioned. My son and I love Frozen so much that we saw it both days. We were at Hollywood Studios. It changes depending on which historian you get, and the humor was so current. They made a 6-7 joke, and the kids screamed with laughter. laugher. So actually, when we were there not long ago, they did a 6-7 joke, and actually everyone was kind of like "woo," which is interesting,
we
to see.
we
To,
our showing didn't have enough of the target audience for the 6-7 joke. Yeah.
and well, adding a little bit about like the to the Phantasmic, a some Jessica P was mentioning that she will add that to the dining plan. The Phantasmic dining package is still 1 credit, which is
Oh,
like a very
wow.
good use. It's a very good
Yes.
use of it. And also, like from Ellen mentioned that they did the Phantasmic package, but at lunchtime. You don't have to do dinner. It was nice. It was a nice way to break up the day. So
Yep. And if characters are important to you, one of those dining package options, and actually it's the most expensive, I think. No, the most expensive is probably
Brown Derby.
Brown Derby, but
Mhm.
among the most expensive is the Hollywood and Vine, which is characters, which is a buffet, and I agree that one's better to do for lunch. Eric, do we have anything else from Patreon?
just adding tips about the Phantasmic, like which are the best seats. Jen once was mentioning that the ones that are near the by the exit, and well, talking about like what you were saying of not being like very far to the front, if you stay like kind of in the middle or the back, also it's easier for you to exit.
Yes.
It gets wild over there.
It's a pretty
um,
chaotic exit for sure. Well, next up, our final plan for the day, I think, is the one that probably most folks who are headed for a Hollywood Studios day, this is the plan that most people are going to have in mind because that is a park that is very much about some big ticket rides. Craig, what is your advice to someone who is all about the rides? And actually, Craig, didn't you tested out your strategy
Yeah.
that you're about to give, didn't you?
Yeah. So I had the opportunity to, after I came up with my plan when I was down there last week, I got to put it in practice and see how it went. Um, and of course, it didn't go as I had planned. I did a lot of changes. I didn't really have to, but I just saw opportunities. And that's kind of where I'm coming from with this strategy is like, keep your mind open to different opportunities, keep looking at the app, check the wait times. Because again, I didn't do the plan that I had planned, but the results were much better than I even expected. So, little ground rules here. I'm assuming you don't have early entry, but you will be using Lightning Lane, Multipass, and Single Pass for Rise of the Resistance. And I can justify that because if you don't have early entry, that means you're not staying at a Disney resort and you saved some money by not doing that. So that's why I can definitely justify and recommend Lightning Lanes for Hollywood studios. Um, I also wanted to add that even though I was a single rider, that kind of gave me a little boost sometimes, but I did not take advantage of things like single rider lines. Um, I also didn't do any tricks to get ahead of a group like at Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. If you're not familiar, it starts with a pre-show in a theater. And if you know like where it's going to open up, if you have that little tidbit trick to know how it's going to open up and then the line starts again. I stood in the back. I was like the last person to get out. And then again, like I barely made it into the next queue and I got called up because I was a single rider. So I didn't, I definitely saved a lot of time by being a single person during that day, but I tried my best not to take advantage of that just so y'all can have more of a realistic. It was also very cold. It was January. It wasn't terribly busy, but it did get busier later in the day for sure. But it was a nice, quiet morning. So, Hollywood Studio currently only has 9 rides, and that's basically what I focused on. So, the 9 rides I did attempt were Alien Swirling Saucers, Mickey Minnie's Runaway Railway, Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run, Slinky Dog Dash, Rise to the Resistance, Star Tours, Rock and Roller Coaster, and Toy Story Mania. Now, since, again, as Rob talked about earlier, Hollywood Studios is pretty compact. I wasn't concerned about crisscrossing the park, but I did want to make sure I did Tower of Terror and Rock and Roller Coaster in the same trip down Sunset Boulevard, so I wouldn't have to go back and forth with that. So, setting up for my original plan. 3 days before, I got my lightning lanes. I got lightning lane for Rise of Resistance, single pass. I got Slinky Dog, uh, Tower of Terror, and Star Tours. Star Tours I got at 9:15 because my plan was to arrive at 8, enter the park, and get into the day guest line at Mickey Minnie's Runaway Railway. Um, so as I was doing that, I just took my time. I did some shopping. Around 8:15, I went to Mickey and Minnie's, and they had a separate holding queue just for the day guests who didn't have early entry. I started chatting with the cast member at that line, and he told me that Star Tours was currently open for all guests, which surprised me. I had never heard that they do that. So I took advantage of that, went to ride Star Tours with no wait. Didn't need a lightning lane or anything. I changed my lightning lane that I had for 9:15 for Star Tours to 9:05 at Frozen. So I was off of uh, Star Tours, and like at 8:25, early entry still hadn't even begun yet. So
That's crazy. So
yeah,
you didn't, even though you didn't have early entry, you got to the park early enough. They let everyone in because in some of the parks they do that. They'll stop you at the ride usually, but you were able to ride Star Tours.
yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, and that gave me the bonus of having what we call a burner attraction. Even though I wasn't planning on seeing Frozen, all I had to do was basically tap in, and then it unlocked all the rest of the rides, all the tier 1 rides. And that's another big hurdle you have to worry about with Hollywood Studios. They have 4 of the 9 rides that have lightning lanes are tier 1. So those are a little harder to get. So unlocking, I think, is very important as early as you can, because the other nice thing about that is those tier 1s usually have an earlier return time available, because everyone only gets 1, but they get to choose 2 of the tier 2s. So those are a little harder, which is kind of counterintuitive, but that is how it works. So anyway, I went to the Frozen Lightning Lane entrance about 5 till 9. I started chatting with the cast member there. I asked, what time do you start letting people tap in? He's like, oh, are you just using this for a burner? So yeah, he already knew. He already knew my plan.
Busted.
I said, yeah. So he even let me tap in at it was like 5 till 9. So as soon as that happened, it unlocked everything for me. So I was able to snag a lightning lane for Mickey Minnie's Runaway Railway at 11:05, which was a great time. And it would have, and by that time, the line had gotten fairly long for Mickey and Minnie's. Now the park still had not opened, so Toy Story Land still did not open for the day guests. So they were all corralled on one side of the entryway to Toy Story Land, and they just kept all of us over there. And then at 9:00, they let us go. It took a minute to walk to Toy Story Mania. It had a 5-minute wait. It was a walk on. And again, that was just me looking at the times, because it's like, okay, well, I can't do anything till 11. That's my first lightning lane. What are the wait times looking like? And that was a no-brainer. So I got on Toy Story Mania and got right off at 9:17. So then I decided to go ahead and head down to Tower of Terror, which was only showing a 15-minute wait. And that ended up being a walk-on as well. So even though I had a Tower of Terror lightning lane later in the day, I was able to switch that to Smuggler's Run for 11:30. So this is all like falling into place quite well. I was off Tower of Terror by 9:45, and then I jumped in line at the Joffrey's cart because it was time for coffee. I needed some coffee, and that was one of the longer lines too, even though a lot shorter than the Starbucks line would have been, as we try to remind people. Joffrey's over
Don't you
Starbucks
wish
if you're
there
trying
was
to
a
save
lightning
time.
lane for Joffrey's? Man, I wish.
Yes, to order ahead.
It would be tier 1, even a mobile order, a mobile pickup.
Well, yeah, even just mobile ordering would
anything
be a wonderful thing.
It would be wonderful.
So, I had my coffee in hand, and I went over to Rock and Roller Coaster. I was going to either do the single rider line or standby. I went up to the cast member at the single rider line and asked her opinion. She said, just go on the regular line. It hasn't been that busy. We're just opening up. I'm sure you'll sail right through. And sure enough, I sailed through all the way up to the room before you go into the pre-show. And I had to stop and finish my coffee because I had just gotten it and I wasn't ready to throw it away. So all these people just kept going by me as I finished my coffee. That was fine. Um, so yeah, I did Rock and Roller Coaster. I've done Star Tours, Toy Story Mania, Tower of Terror, and Rock and Roller Coaster, and it wasn't even 10 o'clock yet. That was in the first hour. So now my first lightning lane wasn't even until 11. So I only had 5 rides to go. 4 of them I already had lightning lanes for. So the one that I didn't was Alien Swirling Saucers. And that posted a 25-minute wait. It ended up being 20 minutes. I had a lovely conversation with a family from Boston. And I rode it by myself. I noticed our friend Lisa on the Patreon chat says she doesn't ride it by herself because she keeps sliding back and forth. And that's true. Yeah, might want to bring elbow pads if you're riding that alone. So by the time I got off Alien Swirling Saucers, it was time for my Mickey Minnie's Runaway Railway and my Millennium Falcon lightning lanes. So I got those 2 rides in, and now it's noon, and I'm down to 2 rides left, Slinky Dog Dash and Rise of the Resistance. And I have lightning lanes for both. Unfortunately, they were not until later in the afternoon, like around 5 or 6 o'clock. I kept trying to push them forward and get them a little sooner. It wasn't really happening. I'm sure if I kept going, I probably could have. But it was so early. It's like, well, what am I going to do? Now, at this point, I deviated because I had realized I'd been at Disney World for 4 days and I had not ridden Guardians of the Galaxy yet. So I totally went off plan. I got myself a lightning lane single pass for Guardians, and I also had a couple of slots for regular lightning lanes. So I got one for Soarin' and one for Spaceship Earth, which I had not done yet either. And I hightailed it over to Epcot, and I got to spend the afternoon where I wanted to. But during that time, if it wasn't me, that'd be a great time to get some shows in, to see some characters. That all that time just opened up for me. Being able to pivot, I think, is a wonderful thing. I actually had a nice lunch at Shikisai in the Japan Pavilion in World Showcase. I know we always talk about during festivals, don't go to a sit-down restaurant. But again, it was me, and I set my own rules, and I was craving some takoyaki. And that was the only place I could get it. So, and I think, Jessica, you did the same thing.
Yeah, we
Later
did
in the week.
Shikisai. We did Shikisai that week too, and it was actually our first time there. And boy, that's a hidden gem now to me. I didn't.
Mhm.
I knew that there was good food, but it was reasonably priced sushi in Epcot, and it was amazing. So 10 out of
Mhm.
10.
Oh, yeah. So again, I just spent my afternoon in Epcot and had no problem getting back to the studios to ride my last 2 rides, Rise and Slinky Dog Dash. So that was it. I got, again, getting everything done before noon except for those 2, and knowing I didn't even have to wait in line for either of those, or a long line at least. So yeah, I'd say that plan went pretty
I think it's
successful.
great.
The 2 things that I took away as I was listening to you go through your day were things that maybe wouldn't immediately occur to someone who doesn't come all the time to the parks. But number 1 is the importance of pivoting and looking for opportunities and changing your plan on a moment's notice because a great opportunity arises. I had no idea, and I go to the parks all the time. I had no idea that they apparently sometimes allow day guests who don't even have early entry to do Star Tours during the early entry period.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you probably can't count on that definitely happening, but I think what happens with a lot of folks, they'll come to Disney World, they'll have this, they'll have listened to something like our podcast and made a detailed plan for how they think their day is going to go and what's going to be the perfect order to do everything. And as your day shows, being open to those opportunities can completely change your day in really wonderful ways. So don't be too locked in to the plans that you make, The other thing that I took away from yours with your use of lightning lanes, I think one of the most underrated things about a lightning lane that a lot of people don't immediately think about, yes, it's about skipping the line. That's, of course, the great appeal of a lightning lane, but it's also about giving you so much time back in your day. There's no way you could have hopped over to Epcot and done Guardians of the Galaxy and had lunch and hopped back and had an easy breezy time doing every single ride in Hollywood Studios if you did not have lightning lane. So in addition to the saving you waits, it really does. It just gives you time back to do whatever things you want to do, shows, characters, park hopping. And I wanted to underline those two things in your experience because I think those are important for people to take away as they're planning and also executing that plan in a park.
Oh yeah, time is definitely money at Disney World. Everything
Mhm.
is money at Disney World, but
For sure. Eric, what are our friends on Patreon saying about our plans for our Hollywood Studios Day?
This is one that no one talk about, and I sometimes forget that it's there. From Jen, she wrote that we love the Vacation Fun animated short with Mickey and Minnie. It's a great show for everyone, which I feel like we have only watched it once or twice, right, Rob?
So I think it's very cool to see it on the big screen, and if you've got littles who love, I mean, let's face it, littles love to watch those Mickey shorts over and over again, even at home. So seeing them on the big screen, I agree, is a really big treat. I don't usually think to do it just because I've seen it and I know that I can watch it at home. But if you haven't seen it before, it's definitely a cool thing to do. And also we didn't mention One Man's Dream,
Oh yeah.
which if you're a big Disney fan, like when I say Disney, I mean the man, Walt Disney fan. That's also one you should probably put on your must-do list. That's a show. Well, I think that's all the time we have for discussing our plans and tips for Hollywood Studios. It is now time to answer some questions. And this week, we have had lots of questions about Rider Switch, including this one from Katie Emily 8 on YouTube. She asks, how long does the Rider Switch pass work for? Can we use it later in the day? We want to do as many rides as possible during early entry, but we will need someone to wait with the little ones, and we don't want to waste that time doing each ride twice. Jessica, why don't you start us off on this one? Because I feel like you're probably the most experienced with Rider Switch and able to kind of let folks know what Rider Switch is and how it works.
So I will preface this with the Rider Switch that I did is a few years old, but I have friends and I looked it up to make sure I'm giving you up to date technology here on Rider Switch. Basically, what Rider Switch is the ability to not have to wait with a child or someone that cannot ride the ride, but that needs constant attention. So I'm going to go over kind of the big picture. I do want to shout out www.prepschool.com. It's a website that has pictures and it has really good graphics on this that you're not going to see as we're talking about it. So if this is something that you really need and you need a little more information than I'm going over here, WDW Prep School. So we'll give them a little shout out. But Rider Switch utilizes the My Disney Experience app. That's the first thing you need to understand is the new process of Rider Switch does utilize the app. And what it's going to do is give you a pass for a portion of your group based on the fact that you have a member of your party that cannot ride the ride. Typically due to height. This is typically a height restriction, but it can also be used for people that just can't ride the ride for another reason, but have to be watched. The other thing I learned when I was researching this, it can also be used if you have a service animal. So if you had a service animal that required attention, so you had two people and a service animal, you can use rider swap for the service animal too, which I did not know until I researched this. Not all rides have rider switch. That's the other thing to realize, is some of them don't. So I'm going to do a quick rundown of rides just so you have an idea of what the rides are. Magic Kingdom has Barnstormer, Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, Space Mountain, Tiana's, Speedway, and then Tron. In Epcot, it's Frozen Ever After, Guardians of the Galaxy, Mission Space, Soarin', and Test Track. In Hollywood Studios, Alien Swirling Saucer, Smuggler's Run, Rock and Roller Coaster, Slinky Dog Dash, Star Tours, Rise of the Resistance, and Twilight Zone Tower of Terror.
Interesting, before you continue, that list for studios was so much longer, it felt like, than the list for Magic Kingdom. Yet
Mhm.
Magic Kingdom has so many more rides. And I think that just underlines what you were saying earlier, that Studios is a challenging park with really little
Mhm.
ones, and which is why
There's
they've got so
so
many
many
rider switch.
Yeah, there's so many rides at Magic Kingdom, but everybody can ride them. And at
Mhm.
Hollywood Studios, it really is, and we've had people say this, Hollywood Studios is just really challenging if you have people with smaller that can't get on those rides. The height challenged. I always say I'm vertically challenged, but these children are a little bit more vertically challenged than me. And finally, in Animal Kingdom, Flight of Passage, Expedition Everest, Cali River Rapids, and the one that surprised me the most out of this whole list, Navi River Journey. Did anyone?
Hmm.
I thought it was just like Small World, and there was no height restriction, but you can rider switch Navi River Journey. So there you go. In order to do the rider switch, this is the process. You go up to the front of the line. You find the cast member that will have an iPad or a tablet, and then you tell them you need to use rider switch. You tell them which members of your party, and there can only be up to two maximum, that want to do the rider switch. They will scan their ticket or their magic band, and then they will be given a redemption pass, much like a lightning lane or a DAS pass. And that redemption pass will be on the My Disney experience, and it will basically be to ride that ride later. So that's kind of how Rider Switch works. A few things about Rider Switch. Some rides have a designated waiting area where it's like you can wait for your person in a room or on a side. Some rides have a designated place you return to for the rider switch that's not the same as the normal entrance. Some rides use the lightning lane. You just need to every time ask the cast member, hey, I need a rider switch. And they'll typically tell you, okay, I know for Tron, they wait right at the exit and that's where they are. And then they get to go in. I know there's signs sometimes at Space Mountain. Here's where you return for rider switch. But it's not always there at Space Mountain. So sometimes they must be using the lightning lane queue. So just be prepared to ask and pivot, like we've been talking about today, based on what the cast member tells you. There is no documented expiration on rider switch time. There is typically a return time that is the time you were there plus however long the wait was at that moment. I think if your party got through their wait quicker, you could probably figure out how to get on the ride quicker and talk to them. But all signs, there's no documented on the website. The parks don't say it. All signs point to you have all day to use that rider switch. So you could do what Katie was originally asking in the question, which was, I'm going to do all these rides in the morning during early entry. And then I'll watch the child. He'll go back and do all of them in a big row. All signs point to you should be able to do that. So it shouldn't be a problem. Now, the one caveat I will say is that if it's just if it's two parents and two siblings and one of the siblings can ride and one can't, a lot of times they'll allow that second child to ride the ride twice, which is a really good kind of thing about rider switch. So that's kind of the big kind of overview of rider switch. It's a really good for parents with smaller kids to be able to ride the ride. It's really good for parents that have more than one child and one of them can ride and one of them can't. I've also the service animals new to me. I think that's a great option too, particularly if you had a service animal for your child and one of the parents needed to stay with that service animal all the time, and it also would let your child ride the ride twice, maybe. So there's some things that you could do with Rider Switch. So think about it. If you have lightning lanes, they assume you're using the lightning lanes. That's the other thing. So if you have lightning lanes, you use the lightning lanes, and one of you just waits out with the child and then uses their lightning lane.
And that is actually, I want to add in here, that's a question that we get asked a lot in our lightning lane videos. In the comments, people will say, if I'm using Rider Switch, I really want to tap in as quickly as possible because, as we've discussed, tapping in allows you to book other lightning lanes in that slot, or potentially, if it's your first ride of the day, it's what unlocks you. Unfortunately, I've spoken to many cast members about this. If you are using Rider Switch and you are using Lightning Lane, the expectation is, as Jessica said, you're going to basically have to wait until you choose to ride that ride to tap yourself into the attraction. That your Lightning Lane is what gets you into the Rider Switch in that scenario. And
Right.
so until both of you have ridden, it unfortunately does not unlock that slot for you to be able to book something else. So that is, I think, one of the downsides of using Lightning Lane with Rider Switch. But the upside, obviously, is the ability potentially for your little one to ride twice.
Right. So that's a kind of a big picture overview of Rider Switch. I think it's a good program for particularly parents with kids. I think it helps. Um, and in general, I just say talk to the cast members if you're confused, and if you want to know more, they'll help you.
We are going to end the show, as we always do, with a section we like to call Happy Thoughts because, I feel like now more than ever, you just need a little burst of positivity at the end of your day. So, Craig, what is your happy thought for this week?
Okay, real quick first, I forgot to mention that when I was there last week, I also got to test out my strategy at Animal Kingdom, which was a couple of podcasts ago. So if you haven't listened to that, go listen to it. And know that I did follow that one to the letter, and boy, did it work out perfectly that morning.
Awesome.
But anyway,
that's a pretty happy thought.
Oh, yeah, that was a nice one. But my true happy thought is that the new Muppet Show dropped today on Disney Plus. It's been getting rave reviews. I can't remember who mentioned it earlier. They said they were late to the podcast because they were watching. I think it was Elizabeth. So if it wasn't you, I apologize. But yeah, it's like 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. So that's what I'm doing when we're done with this. I get to watch the Muppet Show because I have them all on VHS. So that's how long I've been a Muppet Show fan. And I'm really excited to see this. And and the fact that they nailed it, I'm really happy.
Jessica, what is your happy thought this week?
So, like Craig, I was there last week, which was exciting to have all of us there. But we went to Festival of the Arts almost every day we were there. And for those of you that don't know, the Lorcana card game was part of Festival of the Arts. And I have resisted because although I'm a big board gamer, I have resisted having anything else to collect because I didn't need to have. I had a couple of cards because they had Judy Hopps on them. But I resisted. And then we're at Festival of the Arts and they gave us so many free cards and so many free packs. And we got all this stuff. And so we came home and we got 3 starter decks, and I will say Lorcana is the cutest game ever. The John and Belle and I sat down on Sunday when we got home and we played 3 or 4 rounds, and Judy Hopps is the best card in case anybody wants to know. And then they were gunning for her. And I had Coda too, though I did have Coda in my deck. There you go, Coda, which was awesome. And it's just yeah. I resisted for so long getting these game because I knew, and my happy thought is it was as fun as you want it to be. And if you're a gamer at all and you're a Disney person, get a couple starter decks and give it a shot. Entry point is like $15 a starter deck, so super easy. So we had a great time.
Yeah, I want to thank you, Jessica, and John because we went to Epcot together last week in the morning, and they showed me all about the scavenger hunt and the trading and all that stuff. So I probably never would have gotten figured that all on my own. So I want to thank you for being my guide.
No problem. And Craig got some cards too. It's very exciting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Awesome. Eric, what is your happy thought this week?
It was related to Jessica's. Um, I really appreciate that she took the time to gather something for me. She got the Kodak. Wait, you cannot really see it anymore.
So if you're
I
watching,
don't know
if
what's
you're
happening, but yeah.
listening, rather, if you don't see what's happening here, Eric is showing us
Okay.
his 2 Lorcana cards from Brother
Yeah.
Bear.
So she got me like
I
2
saw
Lorcana
those and I
cards,
said
yeah.
Eric needs them.
So I'm very happy to have them in my collection now. They live with me, and I was very excited when I saw them. So thank you.
That's awesome. We got two Lorcana happy thoughts. My happy thought this week is some news that came out today. And that is the news that there is a new CEO coming to the Disney company, Josh D'Amaro, who has up until, well, currently he is the chief of the Parks and Experiences division. So that's his world now, but he's about to become the new CEO of the Walt Disney Company. And the reason that I think this is a really happy thought is twofold. One, I think Josh D'Amaro is going to be an amazing CEO, and we're going to have so many exciting things coming to the parks under his leadership. But also, I'm so excited that they chose to make Dana Walden. She is essentially in charge of all of television, including Disney Plus, and she's an incredibly talented executive. And they're moving her into a kind of a newly created position. It's president and chief creative officer. And so I think they are going to be a dream team because you've got Josh D'Amaro, who has so much experience in the parks. And now a lot of people have said the last CEO that we had that wasn't so great came from parks, and that was Bob Chapek. But it's important to know Bob Chapek was actually not a parks guy. Bob Chapek was a product guy, and products got lumped in with parks and experiences. And that's how he kind of rose up to become in charge of parks. Josh D'Amaro, on the other hand, his first job at Disney was marketing at Disneyland. He has been vice president of Animal Kingdom. He's been president of Walt Disney World. He's been president of Disneyland. His entire career at Disney has been built around working with the parks and Imagineering. And I'm so excited to see him bring that depth of experience from the parks to this role. And I'm so excited that he's going to have a partner in Dana Walden. Congratulations to both of them for these new roles, and we're really excited about the future of Disney. So that is my happy thought this week. Until next time, thank you all so much for joining us. We're going to head off to the Patreon exclusive after party. Again, if you'd like to join us at that after party, just visit us at patreon.com/earscouts. Until next time, don't forget to think happy thoughts, everybody. We'll see you again real soon.